So there you go. We're learning a beautiful Kabbalistic text, and I hope you're excited to join. Right now, we're up to 5,000 hours this past month of learning on our various Kabbalah classes. So if you can imagine, there's always a community of people learning, and I'm glad you're coming to join us to add your learning to those hours of learning that are building up. We are in the Tanya on chapter 40. So if you have this edition, it is Lessons in Tanya. You can get it from Kahot. And we're going over a major topic. We're probably one or two classes from the end. And that is the role of physical action on the spiritual path in Judaism, and then the role of emotions or kavanah, love and awe in Judaism. And to catch anyone up who wasn't with us, and by the way, if you're on Facebook, please go ahead and put comments in the comment section. I will absolutely bring them into class. I'm watching Facebook on my phone, so love to include you in class. I've got you all right there. You're excited, go ahead and as you can hear. So to sum it up, we start in chapter 38 learning that physical action, that's the cornerstone, that's the key of making a home for God here in the physical world. And whenever I put a coin in a tzedakah box, or when I ate matzah, or even as we'll say on Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach that's coming up on Monday, when I eat matzah again, when I do a mitzvah, that suddenly opens up a hole in reality, and the normal veils that block God's presence are gone. It's like a window that I can see through, and all that klipa vanishes, and I can see it's absolutely God's Ratzon Elyon. It's like I'm looking at Keter in Atzilus, if you remember the Kabbalah. And that makes a home for God. But at that point, there's very little light that a physical action can emit because it's physical. And we all know the physical world, you look at it, it doesn't look like godliness. It doesn't look like spirituality. So although it's transparent, it's like, as we said, a tiny pinhole in a wall. And if I want to make that hole larger to let in more light, now I need to add what's called kavanah. And that is not general intention, but kavanah from the Kabbalistic side means both the emotion of love and the emotion of awe engaged, directed to the mitzvah that I'm doing. So kavanah means when I generate emotions and direct them to a physical action. And as we said, the physical action is like the number 1, and then the emotions are like the number 0. So the emotions, if I meditate and create emotions just for their own sake, I just have that 0 on its own. It just sits there. It doesn't add up to anything. If I start with the mitzvah, now I have the 1, then add a 0 to that. Now it multiplies by 10, by 100, by 1,000. And so kavanah is there. Once you have that crack in reality from a physical mitzvah and a home for God, now I want to fill that home with light, and that's where kavanah comes in. And we went through all the techniques of how to do it and which world I can elevate a mitzvah to and how much light I can create based on whether it's intellectually generated, emotionally generated. I won't go through the whole system, but the last 4 or 5 classes have gone through beautiful techniques and also how you can actually go back and re-elevate something if when I did a mitzvah or learned something, I was not really on my game. I was on automatic, or even I was in it for myself. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great? I'll get money, I'll get fame, whatever it might be. The various things you can do to repair, whether actual tshuva or just going back and relearning the thing, and we can re-elevate. So now I want to get us to our current spot. We're on page 584. And let's just go right in. Yeah, let's go right in. And we're going to revisit this idea of the difference between hester, which means the glass is blocked, I can't see that something is godliness, and emitting the light.
Thank you.
Emitting the light, which means lots of lights coming through. So we'll start that again. Keep that distinction clear in your mind, because this is going to be the end of that conversation before we go on to the next whole chapter of the next whole section of the Tanya. Aval b'tfila b'chavanah v'torah b'chavanah lishma. So Cindy, 15th of Nisan. Yeah.
Yep. But in the case of prayer recited with Kavanah and Torah studied with Kavanah lishma,
הרי הכוונה מתלבש באותיות הדיבור, הואיל והיא מקור ושורש להן.
The Kavanah is closed in, that is, permeates the letters of speech, since it is their source and root.
שמחמתה ובסיבתה הוא מדבר אותיות אלו. Go ahead, Eleanor. You want to unmute, please. There you go.
For he speaks these words for and because of this Kavanah.
Beautiful. So I want to review something. I had this all queued up. Here we go. Hold on. Share screen again. There it is. So we looked at this really at the beginning of these whole chapters, the idea of the mitzvah versus the kavanah, the physical action versus the kavanah, and the idea of revealing the essence, taking away what's called hester, taking away God's inner will being hidden versus shining a light, right? So we'll call it hester versus revelation of light. Once I do a mitzvah, if I just do it plain physical mitzvah with a basic understanding I'm Jewish, as we said, it's like I'm peeking through a peephole. I can see what's outside. I can see the day. I can see someone at my door. It's completely revealed, but not much light's coming in. So that's like a mitzvah with only very, very basic kavanah. If I have a little more, now the window gets bigger, a little more, even bigger, until finally you can have the fullness of intellectually generated kavanah, as we've learned, where now there's tremendous light coming in, along with the basic taking away any block that is normally in the way of seeing God's essence in a mitzvah. So now, how does it work? It's described right here. The problem we're trying to understand here is we've been talking about elevating mitzvahs and bringing them up to this world and this world. And if I do it this kind of love, it elevates to here. And if I didn't elevate it, now I go back and I elevate it. And the Alter Rebbe asked at the end of last class, what are you talking about? How do you elevate Torah? How do you elevate mitzvahs? Torah is one with God. Torah is above all the worlds. So what are we even talking about that we who are limited are elevating Torah? That's completely upside down. And it has to do with this concept. It's not that I'm elevating Torah in the bigger sense. Torah is one with God. Torah is above the worlds. Torah precedes the universe. There's nothing to elevate there. But my physical words of Torah, those exist in the physical world. As it says here, right at the bottom of the page, Shemechamata uvesibata hu medaber otiot elu. This is this person's words. This is my words. So yes, the Torah is one with God, but now as you and I are speaking these words of Tanya, which are words of Torah, we're creating physical vibrations with our physical mouths, and that is a physical act which can only transmit so much light, right? You see someone talking, it looks like just an animal making sounds, basically. You know there's something behind it, but you don't see the spirituality. To infuse that body of that mitzvah with a soul, as we've said, a spiritual soul, that's where my emotions come in. Now I need to not just do the mitzvah or speak the words, but engage in them with love and awe so that they infuse the body of that mitzvah with a soul. And that now allows the light that is coming in to be more and more, less contraction and more light coming through. Oh, Alex, I've got a friend coming in, a new student. So please welcome Alex as he shows up. Hi, Alex. How you doing? Wonderful to have you. So that's the key here. I'm not elevating Torah. Torah is one with God, but I'm elevating my words of Torah. And that means infusing them with love and awe And that gives the physical mitzvah, which can't transmit a lot of light, even though it's a home for God, even though there's no hester panim, that mitzvah now has an emotional soul, and now it can rise up. But it's my mitzvah, my words of Torah, not Torah with a big T, so to speak.
Is it the same thing with prayer as it is with the Torah?
Yes, good question. So when we're talking about a mitzvah or Torah, prayer also is included in this. So when you're doing the Shema at Temple Israel, that is a mitzvah, and you want to also do that with emotion so that it gets elevated. And if you're wearing a tallis, if you're wearing tefillin, if you're reading from the Torah, I mean, there's so much involved in it, and you want all that to have the wings, as we'll learn, that will elevate it. Yeah, Sharon? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, what I was thinking, what I got from you was that the Torah is written with words on the page. We have it that way. When we speak it out loud, it's our speech that is the act, the physical act, as opposed to the words that are the words. So it's a human speech that brings it up, makes it the mitzvah, as opposed to if we're reading it silently to ourselves.
Okay. Yes and no. So the whole, any physical part of it, even the Torah scroll itself, the physical Torah.
Oh, or moving.
You look at it.
Or anything.
Yeah. You look at it, there's no hester, there's no hiddenness. You look at a Torah scroll, and there you see Keter Elyon. You see Keter of Atzilus peeking right through reality at you. There's actually no klippa there.
Okay.
But when I look at my Torah scrolls, I don't see tremendous spiritual light flowing from the physical parchment. I see physical parchment. It's a physical object.
Right.
So it's like some things are good conductors of electricity, some things are bad. So a rubber ball, that's not going to conduct electricity. A copper wire, that's going to conduct electricity. So emotions, those are good conductors of spiritual light. Physical paper, physical parchment, is a poor conductor of spiritual light. So although on the side of, we got one more coming to class. Hi, Linda. Although on the side of Hester and the side of stripping away what's hiding God, a Torah scroll completely strips that away, and you see God's presence. The light that's coming through, the actual manifestation of light, it's very poor because physical parchment is a bad conductor of light, whereas emotions are good. So when you pick up that Torah to raise it up or to have an aliyah, if I do that with my own emotions of love and awe, now I'm infusing that physical act with a spiritual soul, and that's what allows it to elevate. But the Torah that we say is one with God, that's Torah in God's mind. That's Torah as we can't picture it. That's Torah as God looked into it to create the universe. That's what we mean. So I'm not elevating Torah in its entire abstract sense. But yeah, when you come and read from the scroll of Temple Israel, and you do with emotions, now I can elevate even that physical parchment and return a spark to its source. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's because these two concepts, right? There's Hester Panim, and then there's the light that can come through, right? So remember that image of, the little window in the door versus the big window on the wall. I can see through both of them. I look into a Torah, I know, that's about God. But how much light's actually coming through? Now that's my Kavanah attached to the mitzvah. Let me check if there's any questions on Facebook. Oh, hi, everybody. Hi, Herb, Francine, Aaron, Koki. Wonderful. Please, any comments that you have, please add to them.
Cantor, I have a question. Is there a distinction between when one prays silently and when one prays out loud?
So, and Sue Ellen, it's a good question. When you say silently, do you mean like very quietly under my breath speaking, or do you mean silently in my mind, like hirhur is the Hebrew word, like speaking just
in my mind?
Yes. So the question is there a difference between prayer that's spoken, whether it's very loud or very quietly? I can speak as quietly as possible, so only I can hear that's still spoken, versus prayer in my mind. It's very related to this topic, so let's go into that. And you'd think, we've talked about this, you'd think, because God knows everything, that if I said a prayer in my mind, that would be just as good. Because what difference does it make to God if I've spoken it with my physical mouth? God knows what I'm thinking. And so shouldn't that be the main thing? I said the Shema in my mind with great devotion, with intense concentration. I meditated for 20 minutes. So what if I didn't say it? God's aware of what's happening in my mind, and it's between me and God, right? The point is exactly what we started this whole section with, chapter 38. The whole reason the world was created was to make a home for God, not in the spiritual, but in the physical, in the lowest aspect of the world. That's what God wanted. God didn't want my soul as it flows through the world of Bria, didn't want a home there, wanted a home down here in the physical. Where does my soul connect with the physical world the best? With my physical body. So if I say a prayer in my mind, very nice meditation, but I haven't yet created a physical mitzvah to make a home for God in the physical world, so I can elevate my physical being. So that's the difference. Once I've said it, no matter how quietly, now I've made that connection. Now I can add tremendous love and awe to that connection. Now I can elevate it. But if I just do in my mind is I haven't plugged it in to the point of reality yet. I haven't made a home for God in the physical, which is the whole point.
Thank you.
What if you do it in sign language or through some other dance or movement? What if do the expression have to be in words?
Very good, Alex. Very good. I think I'm not sure. Dance. There's two answers here, right? So sign language is to me a language. So once you've moved your hands, that's how a person who doesn't speak is able to communicate. And I believe that is like any language. So you can say the Shema in French or Italian. You can also say it in ASL. So I'm quite sure that constitutes speaking prayer in a language, and you're moving your hands just like you'd move your tongue, etc. So I'm sure that is. Dance is another topic, because obviously dancing in Kabbalah is a very, very lofty way of serving God, and is a pathway in and of itself. So the practice of dancing obviously takes spiritual emotions and grounds them in the physical, and that has value in and of itself. But according to the Tanya, I would say if I'm saying the Shema just with a dance, and I'm not also either signing with my hands or saying it, now I'm missing that plug-in, because dancing is not really a way of communicating spoken language. It's a language in and of itself. It's a language of dance, right? I was in theater. I love dance. But you can't literally dance the Shema in an understood language. You know what I mean?
Right, but you can dance the covenant, like you can think the words and dance the have the physical expression, of the words, not necessarily mouthing the symbols themselves, but basically you're feeling the Shema and you're moving around and you're feeling it and you're expressing it physically. Does that count?
Yeah. So that illustrates exactly the point the Alter Rebbe is making, which is we love Kavanah, we love expressing it, we love the emotions, and those are important. But halakhically, if I've just meditated in thought or danced the Shema and I haven't actually said it, now halakhically I haven't said the Shema that day, no matter what's going on in my mind or my feelings or even in my dance. So my suggestion would be simply add the words of the Shema to that exercise, and now all my emotion and all the energy created by my dance elevates it even more and more, right? So for us, it's an adding on to, but the point of the 3 chapters we've been learning is that when it starts from an actual mitzvah, that plugs the whole process into the physical side of reality, which is where the infinite most wants to have a home. So dancing definitely does that, but I would add to it just saying the words of the Shema once, and now suddenly the whole thing, according to the Alter Rebbe, is plugged in and everything is being elevated. Does that make sense? Excellent. Beautiful conversation. Lachen himala otan ad mikoma. Therefore, I think we're at Noreen. No, who's reading?
I think.
1, 2.
Paula.
Paula, will you continue for us, top of 585 if you unmute. There you go.
Wait, which
Therefore,
you are? Okay, that's there. Therefore, the Kavanah elevates the words to its own level.
and I won't go into the technique of each world. We went through the spiritual worlds of Asiya, Yetzirah, and Bria. And depending on what type of Kavanah, what type of emotions I'm attaching to the mitzvah or the Torah, now that mitzvah rises up, so to speak, to that world, to unite with the 10 sfirot in that world, with the godliness, the soul of that world. Yud sfirot, Yetzirah, or Bria.
Meaning to the 10 sfirot of either Yetzirah or Bria.
Lefi ma shehi hakavana b'tchilu rechimu sichlim or tivim chulu kanichtav la'el.
Depending on the type of kavanah, whether a kavanah of intellectual fear and love, in which case they ascend to Bria, or natural fear and love, which elevates them to Yetzirah, as explained above.
And so I don't want to backtrack through that whole chapter. If you look at the last couple of chapters, you'll see the actual levels of worlds and the type of kavanah that makes the mitzvah rise to those levels. There
There in the Sofrot, the Ein Sof light shines forth and is revealed.
And so like we said, not Torah in general, but my physical act of speaking Torah, my physical mitzvah, once it unites with the 10 sfirot in a particular spiritual world, that creates tremendous light. So not only am I seeing through reality to infinity, but now a lot of light is shining right back into reality from infinity. The Or Ein Sof is able to get through because I've given that mitzvah an emotional soul. That's Kavanah. Shehu Ratzon Elyon, Baruch Hu Hamlubash Beotiot HaTorah Shelomed Bechavanatan or Betfilah or Bechavanata or Bemitzvah or Bechavanata.
Meaning the blessed divine will be vested in the letters and in the kavanah of the Torah that one studies, or the divine will in prayer and in its kavanah, or in the mitzvah and its kavanah.
And Sue Ellen, there's the answer to your question. Also in prayer, prayer is absolutely included. And divine will, if you've done the Kabbalah with us, the Kabbalah, that refers to Ratzon Elyon, Ratzon within Atzilus, which is actually part of Keter. Ratzon is the outer aspect of Keter. So if you have a picture in your mind of the 10 sfirot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, all those, it's amazing to meditate on these. This is Keter. This is the super conscious source of the whole shebang that is actually shining right through because I've generated emotions of love and awe in doing a physical act. Oh, sorry, yes, Linda and Alex, have you got the text and do you want to read with us or should we just loop back? So let us know. We'll go.
Just loop back. I have the text somewhere, but I think it'll be easier if you just kind of.
Sure. Let me know when we come around again, if you want to join. We're at the bottom of 585. Let's go to Cindy. This Ein Sof light.
Yep. This Ein Sof light of the divine will radiate in the sphera with an infinitely great brightness that can by no means shine forth and be revealed while the letters of Torah and prayer and the mitzvah are still in this physical world.
So we're still in a physical world. That light is coming through. But while we're in the physical world, before we're 120 years and out of the body, or until we get to the actual point in reality where reality tips, as we've learned, and the whole of the cosmos becomes spiritual primarily, and now you can see the light right in the physical. Until that happens, I'm still in a physical world. I'm still holding a paper Tanya, and there's no blinding light hitting my physical eyes, right? So I know in my mind's eye, I know in my heart, that light is flowing down through the various worlds, but it remains a spiritual light, and I'm here doing my work in the physical world. Lo mina v'lo miktzata. neither
the radiance itself that shines forth in this approach, nor any part of it can be revealed in this physical world.
And he'll point out there will be a time, and as I said, the Reform movement is working towards the Messianic era, when the physical part of reality will be an afterthought and the spiritual side of reality will be the main core of reality that I'm experiencing. And I'll look out and I'll see not 10 people in a class. I'll look out and I'll see 10 rays of godliness all connecting with each other. That'll be the obvious, right? Our physical bodies will be, we have to sit and meditate to check, are you flowing through a physical body that's kind of could be called separate? I know we're all one, but maybe there's also something called separateness. I mean, it's hard to grasp it. So once that is the core reality of the world, now this light will be self-evident. It will shine through, but for the time being, we're doing our work by instinct, as it were, most of us. Ared ketz hayamin sheit aleh haolam migash miotov nigla kavod Hashem v'gomer kanichtav le'el barichut. We had Eleanor. You want to unmute.
Is this disparity?
Yes, please.
Okay, this disparity between the respective levels of radiance of the divine will in the sea throat and in the world will remain until the era of the end of days, when the world will rise out of its materiality and the glory of God will be revealed for all flesh to behold, as explained above at length.
Now, this next note is a long one. I don't want to go inside and do the whole thing. I'll tell you the essence of it. It's explaining how it is that when a new light is revealed from us learning Torah right here, or from doing a mitzvah, what happens in all the worlds, and how the sfirot, in particular, chesed and gevura, loving kindness and might, how they come and are fused together. So we can understand a little bit about what's happening above us in these spiritual worlds when we're doing this Torah learning right here, when we do a mitzvah. So normally, loving kindness, wanting to contribute, wanting to create oneness, that resists strength, might, which wants to, be careful, have a boundary, right? So chesed and gevura, they're pushing against each other. They're resisting each other. They're not included in each other very easily. However, when we do this mitzvah, and with our kavanah, we create a new light up in a higher world, that light is above chesed and gevura. That light's coming from keter, from ratzon elyon, from a much higher sphera. So when a much higher light shines down, it allows chesed and gevura to blend together. And what happens is the gevurot, the aspects of boundary and justice and punishment and natural law, they get sweetened, they get softened, and they kind of blend together with chesed, which is love and forgiveness, call it loving kindness. It's a little like if you have two ministers in a government that are always sparring, always against each other, always working against each other, and Minister A and Minister B, they just don't get along. But when the king shows up and the king rides through town, suddenly they sit at the same table. If the king has an important thing to happen, they'll work together. The presence of the ruler of a higher light, so to speak, will take two ministers that are butting heads and cause them to now work together, because there's a much higher light, so to speak, there. The same thing with our emotions. In the higher worlds, normally, if there's something that really is stuck or blocked, it is what it is, right? There's a reason for it. But if I do, say, an act of tzedakah and I create a new light, now that light shines from above and allows chesed to flow in and sweeten that gevura, and it can change all sorts of things as the world is being created through these spiritual worlds, right down to the physical world. That's that note. If we go in, it'll get a little confusing with the language, so I think I'll leave it at that. Any thoughts about that or questions? Let's go on. Now we're getting to really the headline of our class today. I want to introduce you to a very special angel. This angel is called Matat, And let me share my screen again. I'm not sure I did share my screen last time, but you see it now, right? You guys seeing loading, loading, loading? Right. So this is the concept we had before, right? We got little peephole, bigger window, and bigger. And that is the light shining through more and more. Any mitzvah I can see through, like any of these glass openings I can see through. There's nothing hidden in a mitzvah. But how much light comes through, that depends on my emotions. That's shining the light. Now I want to introduce you to an angel called Matat.
Wait,
This is,
I'm just going to interrupt for a second.
Of course.
I mean, if we're going to use the analogies of electronics, it also depends on, it's not just how, I mean, so a small window, depending on the amount of light that's coming through. I mean, it depends on how bright the light is outside. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So I mean, I think it's, so one of the questions is that the light from these places, does that not impact, the Kavanah? Like, it's one thing to be like, you see a small can, like maybe there's a little can, like you see a little flame, it's maybe not so exciting. And then, but then you see this, brilliant fire outside. It's like, whoa, that's something, so those will definitely have impact on your emotional states that you have. So like if when the neighbors light a bonfire, that's amazing. If I see like a someone light a lighter, it's not so exciting.
Yeah, in this case, it'll be a long conversation, but in this case, I think the better analogy is I spoke about a little last week. We discussed it like Wi-Fi, and the ability to receive Wi-Fi. So, the light we're talking about is infinite, right? So it's not really candles or bonfire. It's all or Ein Sof. It's an endless light. But as a vessel, certain things can receive that light better, just like my hand can't receive Wi-Fi, but my phone can receive Wi-Fi, right? So, the Wi-Fi is invisible to my eye. A phone is a good vessel to receive it. So there's a lot of light coming to that phone, so to speak. My physical hand doesn't receive Wi-Fi. So in terms of that, I can't use the internet with my hand. So I would say it's more about the capacity of the vessel to receive the light than it is about how bright the light is, because we're talking about Or Ein Sof here. So it's not candles or bonfires, it's infinity.
But isn't that light coming from, like, if it's coming from these different sources, Yetzirah and what was the other one?
Bria,
Yeah. So if it's coming like the light is going to be of different. So you're saying whenever you do a mitzvah, it only comes in through the light's only coming in directly through Ein Sof paragraph.
There's a lot of terms coming in. I'd love, Alex, if why don't you and I chat and let's go deeper into this, because if we get into the worlds now, we're gonna it'll be a 15-minute conversation, just kind of clarifying that. It's excellent questions. Excellent question. Let's I got some time later today, so let's chat on the phone, and I want to hear more.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No worries. So here we have the angel Matat. You're seeing this screen, right? So there's a few angels that we know about. There's one angel that we actually met in the Torah when God got angry about the golden calf, and God said, I'm not going to be in the camp, because if I'm there, I'll destroy you because you guys are stubborn. So I'm going to send an angel in front of you, and my name is in that angel. That angel was called Matat. We don't actually say the full name of the angel. It has a full name which is so imbued with one of God's names that we don't even pronounce it. We shorten it. So if you add Tron to Matat, that's the name of the angel, Metatron. But I'm not going to say the full name. That's a practice. I'll call it Matat. And the angel Matat is described as being, the head is made of a Yud, the body's made of a Vav, and then it has two wings. And of course, this connects to our chapter because we're talking about wings to elevate a mitzvah. And those two wings are the Hays also. So if you look at this picture, so to speak, of the angel Matat, And as a caveat, understand this is all way up in the spiritual worlds where there is no physical dimension. So no one's imagining an actual big hay flapping around somewhere outside the Milky Way. This is not having anything to do with physical dimensions at all. So these letters as they exist way up in the abstract as much powerful or more powerful energy sources for the physical and time world. That being said, that's the body. The Vav is the body, the two Heys are the wings, and the Yud is the head. And if you're familiar with God's names, you see that God's most transcendent name, the Tetragrammaton, Yud, He, and Vav and He, is actually reflected in the whole form of this angel. So that's what God meant when God said, "My name is in that angel." And in the Torah, where God went and God apologized and made up, and finally God said, "Fine, I'll be in the camp, build a mishkan, etc." And so Matat didn't have to be a substitute for God's protection. But that's when we first met the angel in the Torah was that story. And the angel Matat is described as taking up the entire world of Yetzirah. So we learned about the spiritual worlds, Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilus. That second world of Yetzirah, which is the world primarily where angels live, which is the world primarily defined by emotions. The angel Matat is that entire world. It's identified with that whole world. So its body spans the whole spiritual cosmos of the world of Yetzirah, which is above even the physical cosmos. So very, very interesting and powerful angel if you're into angels. I will stop share. And now we'll see how the Alter Rebbe brings in the angel Matat into this practice of using Kavanah to elevate Torah and mitzvahs, and the wings really function the same way. This explains Uvazeyuvan hetev ha didchilu rechimu nikrain gadvin derech mashal kedichtiv uvishtaim yofef. Where are we at? Who's reading? Noreen, why don't we go with you? I've lost track. So Noreen, go ahead and unmute. You got your, I think you're still muted. Noreen, can you?
What page are we on?
Oh, we're at the bottom of page 588. This explains.
Okay, we skipped all that. Okay, this explains clearly why fear and love are figuratively called wings, as it is written, and with two wings he flies.
Right, so this quotes, yeah, go ahead.
Alluding to the two midot of love and fear.
So here's where the Alter Rebbe brings in an image that I think is beautiful for when we're doing anything, learning Torah, doing any mitzvah, that once I've plugged in, once I've created the body of that mitzvah, I want it to rise up. And the love that I inspire to add to it and the awe that I inspire to add to it, or respect for that tradition, that really functions as two wings. And now the mitzvah starts flying higher. It starts flying higher. Here's where it comes from. It says, with two wings he flies. This is actually about the Merkavah. This is, the angels around the Merkavah is with two wings. A second quote, Uchmosh Gatav Harav Chaim Vital, Zichrono Livracha, B'shar HaYichudim Perek Yud Aleph, Shehaknafayim Ba'of Hein Zroot Hadam Chulu.
I'm sorry, I've lost my place.
Yeah, we're at top of 589. We skipped that whole note.
Oh. As Rabbi Chaim Vital of blessed memory stated in Shahar HaYechudim, that wings are for a bird, what arms are for a man, just as it is written. Chesed, corresponding to love, is the right arm, and Gevurah, fear, the left arm. Similarly, the wings represent these two midot.
And so we got a little closer to the idea. Rabbi Chaim Vital said, wings are for a bird what arms are for a person, and my right arm is Chesed, my left arm is Gevurah. So the wings of a bird are Chesed and Gevurah. But still, you notice it's not stated explicitly. It's still, we're putting the piece together. A third quote, Vatikunim, this is back to the Zohar, Shehooskim b'Torah mitzvot b'tchilu rechimu nikreim banim.
It also explained in Tikkunim Zohar that those who engage in Torah and mitzvot out of fear and love are called children.
And so in the Zohar, it says, if you have love and awe when you do Torah and mitzvahs, you are banim, your offspring. Vim love nikrim efrochim dola yachlin lefarcha. Go ahead, Sharon. Otherwise, you want to unmute. Sorry, I may have muted you there.
Otherwise, that is, if their Torah and mitzvah lack the fear and love of God, they are called, wait, I'm sorry about my phone. I'm trying.
No worries, no worries.
Okay. Otherwise, that is, if their Torah and mitzvah lack the fear and love of God, they are called fledglings who cannot fly.
And so here the Alter Rebbe brought in another quote that specifically says, if you don't use fear and love, now you're like a bird that hasn't learned to use its wings yet. And so here you see specifically that the two wings are actually love and awe that the Alter Rebbe brought in. And let's look at this analogy a little closer. Let's look at it a little closer. The Alter Rebbe is going to teach that there's a few things all fitting together here. Right? He'll say in a next note that the Mishnah, which is, the 6 volumes of Mishnah, Shishay Sidrei Mishnah, that those also constitute the world of Yetzirah. We want to understand why that is. Mishnah is just kosher or not kosher, right? Allowed or not allowed. It's just the plain rulings with no explanation of why. So if someone says, Cantor Smolash, do you like pizza? And I say, no, I hate pizza. No reason. That's not an intellectual reason. That's just my emotions. That's just how I feel. I don't like pizza. Cantor Smolash, do you like roses? I love roses, right? Do I need to explain? No, I'm saying what I feel. So the Mishnah is just the plain rulings, and that represents God's midot, God's 6 emotions. And you notice the Vav is also the value of 6. So that whole idea of the Mishnah being the whole living in the world of Yetzirah, which also is the Vav of the angel Matat we just met, it all fits together. The Vav is 6. It stands for God's 6 emotions, and it also is the 6 volumes of Mishnah. The reasons for the Mishnah, that actually is the Yud, and that is in the Gemara. That's the explanations that the rabbis throughout the ages have worked out. It's because of this, because of that. No, I'm arguing this and that. All that reasoning, that's up in the world of Bria. But this world of Yetzirah, which is the angel Matat, which is also Mishnah, it corresponds to the emotions. And now, when I see in this quote that it's the 2 hays of love and awe that allow that whole world of physical mitzvahs, right? The Mishnah is what you actually do, what you don't do, and what you do. It's the physical mitzvahs. So that whole world of God's midot, God's 6 emotions, when I want my physical mitzvah itself to rise up, that's where I need to ask those 2 hays of my own world, my own emotions, to engage and infuse the mitzvah with the soul, and that will allow it to rise up. And so the whole image fits together from every level and every angle. Yeah, it's kind of a complex picture, but if you've been with us for the past 4 or 5 classes, does that kind of paint a picture for you guys?
Quick question.
Yes.
The 6. What are the 6 midot, and are they the same? Are they when the translation of Bereshit, Shesh, are those the qualities that were referred to in the first word of Genesis?
Oh, there's a connection between Bereshit and Shesh. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. So bara. So some would say it means Bereshit is bara shesh. This is related to bara shesh.
Okay.
6.
That may very well be. I haven't seen.
Or with 6, but yeah. Anyway, it's just one of the things that I've heard. So what are the 6? I've heard.
Of course, yeah. So always the 6 midot. Whenever you have 6, it connects to the 6 midot in some way, and that is Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, hod, yesod. So the 6 emotions, loving kindness, might, compassion, confidence, acknowledgement, and commitment. So those are 6 emotions with the 6 basic emotions within us, and also they reflect the 6 cosmic emotions within God.
Thank you.
Good. And let's go on. Ooh.
Cantor, does God have emotions?
Well, it's, again, we don't want to anthropomorphize God to the point where we think, well, God's what I'm feeling is what God's feeling, right? If you can imagine what infinite love is, I mean, I only have a capacity for a finite amount of love, no matter how much I work on it. And God has infinite love. So what that is, love that does not exclude anything, right? Love that has no limits. We can't understand, even a glimpse of what that really is. But the best glimpse we have is our emotions. So yeah, when I experience chesed, loving kindness, that's my best way of getting a peek at what that infinite version is within God. So we say God has emotions, but they're not anything to do with ours. Ours are just a tiny snapshot. V'tikun memhe deofa hu matat. I want to go back to Cindy.
Yeah. In Tikkun 45, it is written that the figure of a bird represents the archangel Matat.
Thank you. There you go. So we got this image of a bird. The 2 wings are love and awe. And now we see in the Zohar again, when you're talking about a bird, now you're talking about Matat and the world of Yetzirah. Reisha dile yud v'gufa vav utrein gadfin ha-he chulu.
I've lost where we are.
We're on 589, second chunk from the bottom, his head.
Okay, give me a minute. Okay. 589, okay. The head is the letter Yud of the divine name. Yud He Vav He. The Yud representing Chokhmah. His body is the Vav, the 6 midot, and his 2 wings are the 2 letters He and He, representing Binah and Malchut, respectively.
And for our purposes, the Alter Rebbe is saying the He on the right represents love, and the He on the left represents awe or fear. And so if you're looking at the 4 letters of God's name, the Yud and He and Vav and He, that first He in this example, that's where the wing of love is derived from. And the second He, that's where the wing of fear is derived from. And we're going to complicate things by saying there's a lower level of fear and a higher level of fear and a lower level of love and a higher level of love. But for now, let's leave it at that, right? Left side is awe, right side is love. Vahinu olam hiyetzira shenikra matat.
I think it's me. This corresponds to the world of Yetzirah, which is Matat.
So now we've gone through the whole image as it corresponds to the world of Yetzirah and our practice. And now the analogy gets even more beautiful because we'll look at halachically what defines a bird and how the wings relate to it. And that'll probably be our last point for the day. So I'll set this up. Halachically, if an animal has injury that is life-threatening, now it's not a kosher animal anymore. Now you can't eat it. However, if for whatever reason a chicken lost its wings, a fox caught it and bit the wings off, and then the chicken escaped, and now you got a chicken with no wings, is that chicken kosher? The answer is actually yes, because the wings are not essential to the life of the bird. The ikar, the core of the bird, is the body. But for a bird that flies, the wings actually allow the body to fly. And it's exactly the same relationship as we're having with mitzvahs and emotions, right? The vav, the mitzvahs contained in the Mishnah that we do here at Temple Israel, that we do as Jews, that's the core. We're saying that creates a home for God. That's what we learned back in chapter 38. That's the essence. You need that. The wings, they're actually not essential to the body of the bird. And once I have the vav, that's it. God has a home in the world. But do I want a bird that can't fly? No, I want a healthy bird that can fly way up and have experiences and soar. And you look in the sky, how inspiring. So now the hays, they are the body of matat, or the body of they lift up the body of matat, or they lift up the body of my mitzvah, but they're not essential to it, right? It's only once I've got the vav, or the mitzvah, that now I can add the love and awe in a way that they make sense. And it really speaks to, I think it's something very important for the progressive community to benefit from, because I mean, I myself, I have that sense of, if I sit and I meditate and I have a very spiritual experience and I feel incredible emotions and I'm uplifted, that is beautiful and meaningful, and it is. However, that's all about myself in a subtle way, right? The whole point of the Tanya is to be other-centered and to learn to have the divine soul be the compass bearing, and the animal soul is just getting energy. And so unless I've actually done something for God, and God wants a physical mitzvah in the physical world, speech and action, now it remains just an experience for myself. Whereas if I take that same spiritual and emotional energy and I plug it in to a physical act, because that's the core of Judaism, is eating something with a blessing and doing a mitzvah and giving tzedakah. We're so about the physical act. That defines us before our philosophy. Now I have what the Alter Rebbe and Kabbalah call Kavanah, which is emotions that are directed to a physical act, which is creating a home for God, filling it with light, and allowing my mitzvah and my Torah to fly up to high spiritual worlds. Okay, we only have a few minutes, so let's finish with our meditation. Long, short path. And if you're, by the way, if you're joining us online, feel free to email Maya. We have a few new class participants today, and we'd love to have you join as well. So just email Maya at temple-israel.org, and you can join us here in Zoom. Just find yourself in a comfortable position. In Jewish meditation, the positions are not so key because we're not keeping the mind empty for an extended amount of time. So there's less technical parameters required. Let's let our breath lengthen, which is that first appearance of the soul in the physical world is through the breath. So you want it to flow evenly, deep within my belly. And we're going to be aware of the 4 components of breath: breathing in, holding the breath in, breathing out, holding the breath out. Usually that holding in and out lasts for only a moment, but we're going to extend it to be even with the in-breath and the out-breath. So we'll count 4 for each. Follow me, breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Stay full, 2, 3, 4. Release the breath out, 2, 3, 4. And staying empty, 2, 3. Once again, in, 2, 3, 4. Nice and full, 2, 3. Back as long as you breathe out, 2, 3. Eyeballs smooth, eyelids smooth as you stay empty and continue on your own, breathing in. Now the breath is expanded to its full form. Let's open up our wisdom gateway. So the space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath is our wisdom gateway. Space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath, there's an emptiness there. That's our wisdom gateway. Let that open. It's quite intuitive. And in that wisdom gateway, let's place this divine concept of the angel Matat. Spans the entirety of the cosmos. That Yud, the head, which is perfect potential, the Vav, every possible emotion, and the 2 Heys are my love and awe. See the power that it gives every act that I will do. Let that divine image, that divine concept, not that Matat is divine, right? Matat's an angel. We don't pray to God forbid, to an angel, but let the spiritual idea fill your mind so that it fills your mind completely, leaving no room for anything else. And if you're watching in the future, feel free to pause and keep this concept in your mind as it grows in detail, in light and motion, moving upwards. And also notice if you're experiencing any emotions, perhaps an excitement, a love, perhaps a sense of wonder or respect that, my goodness, is that really the power I have when my emotions are generated? Know those emotions are there to uplift everything we do for the rest of the day, the rest of the week. Wiggle your toes, open your eyes. I almost forgot. Before we go, Monday, you can hang out for 2 more minutes. Monday is actually a beautiful day. It's called Pesach Sheni. So Sunday night, Monday, the story was, picture a year after Passover, and Moshe comes and says, give the sacrifice again, slaughter it, eat it just like we did back then in Egypt. We're going to do it every year. And there were some people that they had contact with a dead body. It happens. And they couldn't participate in eating the sacrifice because they weren't ritually balanced. So they came and they said, hold on, we shouldn't be missing out. How do we participate and eat the sacrifice? And Moshe and Aaron, they asked God, that they said, okay, a month later, you'll have a second chance, second shot, and you'll do the sacrifice again. If you missed it the first time because of traveling and it was impossible or ritual impurity. And so that was established. It's actually, it's a general Jewish holiday, Pesach Sheni. All you got to do is eat some matzah with a blessing. The blessing would be over hamotzi lechem, right? Because it's not a mitzvah to eat matzah, but you do hamotzi lechem, you eat some matzah, any leftover. And what it is if there's anything that you felt you wanted to be free of on Pesach, and that Seder was there, and you had the matzah, and you got your ego out of the way, and now you're really working on it. But you know what? We're human, and last week I messed up, and I let my emotions get in front of me, or I had a moment of weakness with whatever. This is a second chance. So anything that you wanted freedom from back then at Pesach, now's your second chance to have some matzah and get that ego completely out of the way and use that as a springboard for amazing things. So that's any time during the day. Monday, it's not a lot of legal parameters about how to do it, just matzah with a blessing. Thank you for joining us for User's Guide for the Soul. We'll see you next week, and signing off of Facebook right now.